Gosha Theater Drama Club Table Talk, episode 2, season 2. If I'm already having trouble counting and we're on 2, maybe I need to go back to Sesame Street and spend some time with my friends on Sesame Street. I've been watching The Muppet Show, though.
Oh.
Realizing how highly influential that was on my life. Did you guys watch The Muppet Show as kids? Randa didn't.
I didn't.
Katie
I was
and
a
Paul?
Barney girl.
Explains a lot.
I had a worn out copy of the Muppet movie and the Muppets Take Manhattan.
Oh, what about the Great Muppet Caper, Paul?
That I could talk for a while about the Great Muppet Caper.
I had that album on vinyl.
Yes. I was young enough that the old Muppet movies had come out to VHS, but Great Muppet Caper was really only like on the Disney Channel when I was a kid, and I didn't have cable. So I saw a lot of commercials and promos for it. Still haven't seen it to this day.
Oh, Paul. It's good. Just Miss Piggy's wardrobe alone is a reason to watch it. Believe it or not, folks, this is not the topic of today's Table Talk. Today, we are talking about the reality of being a grown-up and an actor in this world. We're going to talk about things like your car, taxes, where you're going to live, what that lifestyle is going to be like, and how we could set you guys up for success to treat this like a business, because we all love it and it's fun and we're passionate about it. But if it's your vocation and your job, it's a little different. So we're going to talk to you about some of those challenges and set you guys up for success today. You're going to know more than I did when I left college. So that's the aim here at the Table Talks, is for you guys to be smarter than us.
Yes.
Woo-woo. Joining me today, our regular panel is with us today. We're going to start off today with Akira. Akira, how are you? What's been going on? Have you had any experience in the arts this week?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm taking voice lesson once a week, so that's my something about art, and I'm just dancing and jamming around on the street. And in Japan, people don't do that, so I'm just weird. That's it.
In Napanee, people don't do it either. So I like
Kira does it though.
Exactly. Like walking down the street from the Round Barn Theater to the coffee shop, there was like with you listening to your headphones. And it's not that you were dancing, but you were definitely like on a rhythm. It was the best.
She was on her strut for the day.
Inspired by Akira. I love it. And next, Miss Katie. Katie, how are you today?
I'm good, doing well. I got my first Pfizer vaccine this weekend, so been a big party here.
And that's your thing with the arts, because science.
I'm saving the arts by getting my vaccine.
Oh, that's great. That's a good angle on it.
Preparing for camp, since we want to do it in person.
We are doing it in person. Even like last year, Miss Katie and I did the camp in person, but we were the only ones here with Miss Molly. It was just us. Y'all were on the internet, but hopefully you guys can join us this year at the theater. All right, Paul Regano is also here. Oh, Paul Regano, the Quarantine Queens t-shirt. Yes.
I had to.
Of course, it's your first episode of season 2. You're featured extra this year.
I'm so sorry to miss last week, but I had a squash game that I had rescheduled from last year, and a dentist appointment, and the meeting of my Rotary Club. I moved them all from last year, and I was like, let's just pick March 24th, 2021. So I was booked solid.
Just wall-to-wall bookings.
But I'm glad to be back.
It's a tragedy. Have you done anything in art this week?
Oh, yeah. I've been pretty busy since the beginning of the year. Actually, my annual concert, the Ides of March Extravaganza, was a huge success. It was still on YouTube for the time being, and you can see some people from this call in that concert, and they're brilliant, and we love them. And then I've just been working on my new company, Curtain Upload, which creates musicals that are meant to be performed virtually for these wild times when you can't be in person.
but also the wild times after when we can't be in person, when this is a new performance medium that we're all now comfortable with, and we get to create art in the same way, in a new way.
Hey, I hope that continues. Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine the transition of taking theater from the amphitheater indoors. Imagine what that was like for people. Because they had the new technology of roofs.
But
Yeah.
truly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the same thing.
Yeah.
We're taking it even further indoors.
Only be in our mind.
We'll just beam it in. That's terrifying. The idea that they could just beam something into your head. Nobody listen to that. That's not what we want. Don't do it. Hopefully, society will hopefully break down before then. And last but not least, Randa Meyer, Henry Randa. How are you? How have you been? What is your week in the arts like this week?
Doing good, feeling good. Happy to be back. I guess like the 2021 has been really great for the arts for me. I've been teaching a lot of voice lessons and some piano lessons, which is cool. I also got a couple of sound design gigs that are coming up, which is super awesome. It's like really tricky because we got to deal with mics and masks and face shields and all that jazz. So it should be an event for sure.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Well, I'm glad everybody's doing so well. I know like 2020 was weird. 2020 is still weird. Everything's crazy. So I think one of the things about this group of individuals specifically is that I think we all get along really well because we're good roll with the punches people. We've been through a lot because we've all been able to just sort of roll with it. Yeah, there have been like some of the greatest days of artistic achievement have been with this group of people. So I'm not surprised at all that y'all are doing great in 2021. I'm doing fine. We're here at Goshen Theater. We have public events coming up this week. We have 100 invited people. Jerry's here. Jerry, come say hello to the children. Yeah. Oh, he's got his mask.
I don't need to be re-announced.
He doesn't need to be re-announced. It's Jerry, everyone. Jerry, technical director at the Goshen Theater.
See you all later.
Bye, Jerry. He's like Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
I was just thinking that. I was like, can we have a cameo every week?
I would love to have a Jerry cameo every week.
Just show in like with a quick tip of the day.
Yeah, Wednesdays at 11. Maybe Fridays at 11. All right.
Can he do post-credit PSA?
Bye, Jerry. Thank you. The post-credit PSA. Oh, we're gonna rope Jerry in. It's gonna happen. But yes, things are going well here. We're prepping for public events. That's why Jerry's around. He was just hanging plexiglass for our partitions. We're showing Wizard of Oz on Saturday, so that'll be great. And then next week, there's a world premiere of a documentary about some department store owners from Goshen. It was Plout's department store. And they invested a ton of their money and a bunch of their resources to sponsor Jewish people in Germany to get them out of Germany during World War II. So they provided this space and a way for people to get out. And the documentary is about them. And the person hosting the documentary is their grandson. So yeah, it's like a Goshen history and world history thing. So it's an important event, an important film, and we're excited to be hosting it. That is the 9th, Friday the 9th. So we have those two events coming up. Obviously, seating's limited. We're doing social distancing, and I'm a little bit aggressive about it. So if you want tickets, get them now, but go to goshentheater.com if you guys want to see that stuff. So, we had a hot take planned for today, but I think we're going to go straight into the meat of our episode, just in the name of keeping it short up. So our hot take was going to be about if theater workers are essential workers and the issues with the COVID-19 vaccine and Broadway reopening. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to hold that. We're going to put a pin in it. We're going to talk about that next week. Oh, and now everybody's like, oh, what are they going to say about it? If you have comments about it, you let us know by commenting on this down below, or you can comment on Facebook as well. If you want to know more about it, BroadwayWorld.com covered this, and there was a headline article. If you want to go head over to BroadwayWorld.com and read it before you let us know what you think. What's your opinion? So today we're going to be talking about sort of the issues with being a grown-up in the business. Like, how do you run this as a business? How do you, we always talk about your art life psyche balance. We talk a lot about being a healthy artist and like how to make certain that you're making the right choices for yourself, how to self-advocate. So we feel like we've got you guys covered on mental health. We talk about it quite a lot, but there's some other things that'll affect your mental health, like having to pay a water bill, that we're also going to cover. So I think I'm going to start with Miss Katie. Katie, today, what would be the one thing that you would want to like not necessarily warn them about, but prepare them for? And then everybody, if you have comments, we can just, table talk it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is to know, number one, what kind of education you want, so you know what the cost is, and whether or not you think you need to go to a school to do this work, or whether you think you can pay class fees in a city somewhere that's going to teach you the same skills, but in a different setting. And you can choose what kind of things really cater to your abilities in that fashion. I think the next step would be to know exactly what your living expenses are going to be, what you can and cannot live without, and cut down on material things, because for the first few years when you're working, you'll probably be moving a lot, subletting apartments a lot. So, you're down to like a couple of tubs of items that are your essential things that you can move with you everywhere. I practically lived out of my car for most of the time that I lived in Chicago, because I had to pack everything away for subletters and I would be on the road. So know what's essential and know your living cost and understand what living within your means actually means. Save all of your receipts for tax purposes. Know what's tax deductible, and just be smart and be prepared. Save as much money as you can, because you have a lot of expenses, not only in real life, but as your job, like headshots and business cards and that kind of thing. Like all of those things are expenses that need to be kept up with. Class expense on top of your rental fees for your apartment, all of your utilities. Like, it's a lot, guys. So just be prepared and like take a class where you learn about finances. You guys are in school, our younger viewers, you guys are still in school. If there's a home ec class, a finance class, something like that, take it. It'll be useful. It may not seem so at the time, but it will be down the road. Like, help yourself out the best you can right now.
Yeah, I had my my traveling actor like kit. I had it down to a science. I knew, like, I'm a sentimental person, so I knew I wanted some sentimental things. So I had a big poster frame where I put photos of my family, like little pictures of my family, and that laid flat in my back seat. I had one crate of sheet music because I always knew I needed music with me for playing, for auditions, for other stuff. So I had it in one crate. And then when I got to wherever I was, I would turn it this way like a bookshelf, and that's where my computer would sit. So I had that one crate, and I had everything down to, okay, this is what I need. This is how I do it. And then when I would pack up, I just literally go boop, put it in the car, put it in the car. Yeah. And put your bedding in a trash bag, sit on it till all the air is out of it, and then tie that into a vacuum sealed knot. Do not put your bedding in a trash bag and then put a vacuum cleaner inside it to suck the air out, because that will suck your bedding up. And I've learned this the hard way 2 times. So
Fool me once.
You're telling me once wasn't enough?
I thought the second time, I was like, I learned a lot the first time. I bet I could do it this time.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice.
So Katie brought up some interesting stuff about keeping your receipts, right? And I'm going to open up the floor for this one. But what are some tips that you guys have for being fiscally well organized? I have one thing that I do. Instead of keeping my receipts, the second I have a receipt in my hand, if I think it could be a write-off, like, is this clothing I'm going to wear for an audition? Is this clothing I'm going to wear for rehearsal? Is this a specialty item that I need for a show? Is this sheet music? Are these violin strings for me? Those are write-offs. So I know if it's something I'm going to use for my job. Is this movie ticket something that is research? Yes. All movie tickets are research for you because you're learning about actors acting. So your Netflix can be written off. Same stuff. So I would be like, okay, is this something I can write off receipt? And then I would take a picture of it. So all of that uploads from my phone onto the cloud automatically. And then when I need to at tax time, because I don't do it ahead of time, I just take the picture and leave it. I'll go through and I will type receipt in the search bar, and then all my receipts show up. It's really simple. And then I've got it all. The state of Indiana at least accepts scans for auditing purposes. And so does the IRS now. You don't need paper receipts. They accept a scan. So when you're totaling all that stuff up, you can like have all of those resources saved digitally, then you don't have all that paper. The second thing is that I'll bring up about taxes is there's something called a standard deduction. The standard deduction is over $6,000. So if you don't think you're going to spend more than $6,000 on your career in a given year, which some years you won't, but some years you need headshots. So some years you are going to spend that $6,000. If you don't think you're going to spend $6,000, don't have a lot of anxiety about it because you're just going to take the standard deduction. If you have questions about the standard deduction, write it in the comments. Miss Amber's going to send you a little email about it. But yeah, you don't always have to itemize everything because sometimes it's not worth it to itemize things. But at least in your first 2 to 3 years of being an actor, do that. What's one financial tip? Paul, you unmuted. What's one financial tip that you have for everybody, Paul?
You actually stole all of mine. I was going to talk mostly about write-offs. Let's say you go out to lunch while you are, a bunch of people go to lunch on a break during rehearsal. We're bending the rules a little bit here, but you're with colleagues. You're probably talking about work. You could be talking about the show that you're in. You could be talking about networking for the next show that you want to be working on. That's a business lunch. Write it off.
I have you one better, Paul, and this might be something that you may or may not have known. If you qualify your gigs as business trips.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're like, okay, I'm going to Napanee, Indiana on a business trip for 8 weeks to do this show,
yes. Everything
you eat is a write-off.
I've written off gas.
Yeah.
For travel. Not all of it. I think there's like a rule of like how much of your travel you're allowed, but also I have a home studio, which means that part of my rent is office space, which I need for my career. I write off about 25% of my rent annually. That's a nice big chunk. I also wanted to clarify earlier, you said you might not spend $6,000 every year, but some years you need headshots. Don't let anyone talk you into paying $6,000 for headshots. There are other expenses in addition. If you're paying that much for headshots, they better come with a guarantee that you're being cast in something. I do the exact same thing. Receipts, so all of my subscriptions, Netflix and Hulu and whatever else. It's market research. It's not just that I'm watching actors and I'm seeing things. Oh, that works. Oh, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? It's market research. What is happening in my industry right now? This is my job to know this. If I walked into an audition and someone said, "Now in this moment, you're kind of, it's kind of like a Don Corleone moment," and I was like, "Who?" I have to have seen The Godfather. I have to know what that means. And that's a weird example, but it's.
Don't watch The Godfather, kids.
Oh, kids, do not watch The Godfather for a while.
Ask your parents. Your dad will probably be thrilled if you ask to watch The Godfather.
Frozen. I don't know. Any kind of reference to films, television, musicals, every Broadway show I see, I write off. Everyone. So those are my. That was my like big like, oh, I know what I'm going to talk about.
I stole it.
Making sure that you are investing in yourself, but in a way that you're tracking it, that you are saying, this is worth spending the money on, and I know that I'm going to get it back, or I know it's going to be taken off whatever I'm paying later.
Yeah. Randa, what's a financial tip from you?
I have a hard time with this topic, I think, because I have
We all do.
a lot of privilege, I think, in that I haven't really had a ton of financial struggles. I'm very, very fortunate to have been, like, I've worked most of my career post college. I will say this though, because on tour, on tour we get a stipend for miscellaneous things, whatever you may need on tour. Part of that stipend goes towards, we paid for our own hotels through that, so that we could get like hotel points and things like that. So like, I guess my advice is that there are many, many, many ways to save money or spend money or budget your money. So I don't think that there is like a set rule. You just got to figure out what works best for you. And if you think that it's worth it to spend $600 on your headshots as opposed to asking your friend to take headshots for you for $25, then like do that and budget that in, and maybe you skip Starbucks for a month. You know, you just got to figure out what works best for you. And I think that that's the only advice that I can really give and feel confident in giving.
That's really smart though. Like, I think this kind of sort of brings up a little bit of a side topic, which is the aggressive marketing on young people of credit cards. So it does seem easy to get a credit card, and I've got one. And I know that when I was working at RBT, we get laid off 3 months out of the year, that it was hard not to lean on something like that. Like that kind of what they call a financial instrument, like a credit card or something where you're allowed to borrow small amounts of money and then pay it back. It's tempting to be able to do that, particularly like, oh, you first moved to New York, you've got this much saved, you're budgeting really well, but like there's these extra expenses. It'd be really nice to have a little wiggle room. So, oh, let's just get a credit card and we'll build up that credit. The hard part about it is that there's always a day where that's going to come back at you. And it's, for me, if there was ever like a financial regret, it would be, oh, I went into debt in this way without really understanding. Like student loans are still something I deal with, and I'm in my 40s, right? Do you guys want to be in your 40s and still be dealing with all of the stuff around student loans? I have, I think, 7 more years of paying on my student loans. So I'll be almost 50, but I know people who are in their 60s and 70s who are still paying off student loans. And that's like more than a mortgage. It's crazy. So really like be conscious, not just about like what Katie said about like how you want to live, like what can you live without, and what Randa said about how you spend your money and maybe you go without Starbucks, like budgeting. Be cognizant of both of those things, but also be cognizant about what debt you're taking on. And do you want to have a little bit of prosperity now for a little bit of hardship later? Because that's aggressive. It's getting worse too. Like they market to college campuses specifically. It's really terrible.
It's in overdrive right now with the pandemic.
Yes. Credit card debt's crazy.
At this time. So they do it for a reason. So be aware of what you're doing to yourself.
Well, on top of that, like the economy expects you to have that because you need a credit score to do certain things. Like if you want an apartment, you have to have X amount of income or a guarantor or a certain credit score or a certain amount in your bank account. This is a hard topic because we are kind of screwed sometimes because our industry doesn't lend itself to, unless you are like headlining Broadway as gosh, go look how much Bette Midler made for Hello Dolly compared to Donna Summer. They were doing the same amount of work, and I don't know, that makes me really angry.
Yeah.
I know that she's like a big star, but they were doing the same amount of work on the same role, 4 shows a week each, 4 shows a week each. I don't know. It's just a weird world, man. It's a weird world, and money is hard.
Money is hard.
I will also add that while our industry doesn't lend itself to, the traditional, keeping a good credit score and regular income, I will also say that our the way our economy is structured is not, I think the door swings both ways. I think that like there are certain things about credit scores and the financial. I'm not very eloquent this morning.
I'll edit this out. Don't worry.
Than any other night. But yeah, that idea of the credit score, of the guaranteed income, it does not lend itself to artists, which there are many of us. So I don't know why we're so ignored. It goes back to our theater artists, essential employers.
Workers. Yeah. On the same kind of point, and this is just a really short story. I don't know if you guys know who Dave Ramsey is. Love him or hate him, Dave Ramsey is a guy who talks about like getting out of debt, and one of his big things is like getting families out of debt, like pay off your mortgage, pay off your cars. And one of the things that he thinks is a great accomplishment is to have a 0 credit rating. So that means you've got no debt and you don't have credit cards. Everything that you buy, you could afford because you pay cash for it. And there's sort of a religious undertone to his stuff. So some people that rubs them the wrong way, whatever, but it's actually really good advice. He told a story on his show about how there was an apartment building that was for sale close to him, and he was thinking about purchasing it because it was close to his business campus. So he wanted to see what the process was like of renting an apartment. So he went in to try to rent an apartment to see if like the staff were people that he would want to work with them not knowing who he was or anything. So he walked in, he filled out the application, and they rejected him for an apartment because he didn't have a sufficient credit rating because his credit rating was 0. So he applied to live in a building where like they had access to his banking record, his like information, knew how much money he had, but they said he couldn't live there because his credit score was insufficient. But he could buy the building. Like, it's crazy. That is a screwed up system. So we're part of a screwed up system. So realize that and know that as being part of that screwed up system, that there is a little bit of game playing that you have to do if you want to live within that system. So credit's important, debt's a thing. So just be careful.
A friend of mine has a great credit hack, which is quite the opposite of the 0 credit score, but I find that fascinating and I'm definitely going to look that up. Yeah. But she is a whiz, and she toured a lot right out of college. And so airline points were important to her. And she got a credit card. They got great points that she could put towards like Sky Miles for whatever airline. And then she paid her rent with her credit card every month. And she had the money. She had pay your rent. Do not pay your rent with the credit card if you do not have rent. Have the rent ready, pay it with your credit card, immediately pay off your credit card. So your credit card's taken care of, your credit score is good, but the amount of miles that she was able to rack up, she flew to Amsterdam and back, and I think didn't pay a cent. I think she paid for her hotel there, but like, she went to see the tulips for free.
That's amazing. See, like those are the sort of like financial hacks that you can really get into, and they're very valuable as an entertainer. Think about like you want to live, like you want to have experiences on this planet if you're an artist, because you never know what's gonna like influence you. And speaking of travel, Akira, do you have any sort of financial tips? I know that you've had a ton of different kinds of experiences, because I remember there was a point when you went back to Japan to see your family during the season at RBT. I can't imagine, like, it's got to be so hard to know also that you can't just like hop in a car and go do your laundry at your mom and dad's house. Like you've got all of these other considerations in place. Were there any like financial hacks or things that you learned that you want to share?
Yeah. First of all, I don't make money for flights. My parents help me to pay flights because I just can't make that from acting job. So I'm just lucky. But I have a rule on my bank account, and I also don't have a credit card. I don't like it. I only have debit card, and I only pay by debit card because I'm too scared. Then I have to have at least $2,000 on my bank account, because usually the flight to Japan is like around $2,000. So if my bank goes under $2,000, that's really bad. If something happens, I just have to go back to Japan. So that's minimum I have to keep. So if it gets close to $2,000, I have to be careful or make money or save money somehow, because that's like my bank account. Like for me, $0 is equal to $2,000. Like I can't spend any more than $2,000 because that's the minimum for me. And also for the receipt, I have envelope, and like I put all the receipt into envelope once, like every year. This is 2020 envelope, 2021 envelope. And also on the email, I get like email receipt a lot. So my email account, I have like tax box, tax folder. So I put all the receipt into the email account which says tax. That's how I keep the money.
I forgot about e-receipts. That's really smart. That's really smart. I actually really also, Akira, like the idea of a threshold, a zero threshold, where $2,000 is $0. I like that. Like I may adopt that for myself. Paul.
A lot of banks will also let you set up an alert. Your account is below the number that you asked us to notify you if it goes below.
Yeah. I have a finance hack that I use sort of about saving, but I have one account that's my main account. And then I have a second secret account. So everybody does direct deposit. I just have a certain amount every paycheck. I set it up this way when I first get any job. I ask them to do 2 direct deposits. One of them, an amount of money will go into the secret account, and then my main paycheck will go into my main account. I have a debit card for the secret account. I cut it in half. Like this is money I don't have access to. And if I need it, I can go to a bank and get it. But it's out of my mind. It's not part of my main financial stuff. If I've got to go over there and grab it, I can. But yeah, I do that just to make sure that I have something that I don't see. Because sometimes for me, because I'm not great at this, with saving in particular, it's really hard for me to look at my bank balance and go, okay, cool. I'm going to save this amount, and then I'm going to use that savings account as overdraft protection or whatever. Oh, I really want to buy this thing, so I'm just going to transfer that money over. It's so easy to do that for me, I'm weak. I'm terrible. I want to be comfortable and happy, and I want to go to Build-A-Bear, which nobody needs a Build-A-Bear, but I love it. So like, I am a weak person who has like terrible, stupid things that they like. So I have to have something that's far away, that I can't look at it, that I don't see it. I know it's there kind of. The tone of it exists, but I don't access it. So if you're weak like me and terrible with money, I would recommend doing that too. And not having a credit card is also a really good idea. Katie.
Something we haven't touched on, but we talked about it before we started recording, and I think it's very important, is where you end up living and the living experience. Like, because here it is, guys. I lived in Chicago. Right now, I'm not in Chicago because pandemic. Hello, my job's closed. No sense in being there. But even when I was living there, the majority of the time, I was not even living in the city. I was subletting my apartment. The majority of the work that I have has been regional, and I travel to it. I have done one show in the city, and I didn't even book it by doing an audition in the city. I did it via an online video audition, booked it from that, and by word of mouth from a friend who was already stage managing for them. So I understand coming from a small town. I understand wanting to escape to a city, that you want to go and live your dreams and your passions. I encourage you to consider living close to that city where you can commute, where living expenses may not be as expensive and you are able to commute to do your auditions. And if not, get a bunch of friends and convert rooms into extra bedrooms. That's what I did. And I know we talked a lot about, skipping Starbucks and not to rag on that idea, because you do have to budget. And that may mean that if you have the luxury of getting Starbucks every day of your life, and you can cut that out for some time to get the money you need, amazing. There are many, many actors, myself included, who face or have faced, I'm not now, but have faced food insecurity because we simply cannot live in the city on what we make. And so you cut out those meals. It's not healthy. It's not mentally healthy. So just be aware of that. Like, yes, budget, eat at home, don't eat out, cook for yourself, those kinds of things. Those are key to making it work if you want to make it work. But be aware that by doing some of the things that we have done and lived through, I bet you there are a lot of things that we would take back and change now if we could. If I could have moved closer to a city and still found the love that I had living there and still have had all the jobs I had, I would do it in a heartbeat. If it meant that I couldn't have experienced some of the things I experienced because of financial issues. So I have a lot of financial anxiety, always have throughout my life. So I'm very, very much budget minded. Like, I pay all of my bills before I do anything else. That's a huge thing for me. If I don't have the money, I don't spend it because I don't have it. And I know what I can live on. So it's all about living within your means, knowing what your means are, and knowing if you have anyone to fall back to help you. Because that is a thing. I have a lot of friends who are very, very fortunate to have families that can help support them. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to rag on. I would never, ever try and make you feel bad about that. That's not my thing. That's great. Know what you have and what you don't have. I come from a family who would love to do that for me, but they cannot. And so I always know in the back of my mind, I am on my own. I have to do this. I have to be able to do this on my own, or I'm not doing it. So just be aware of where you live and what the finances are going to be like there.
Yeah, there's another thing too that I've noticed with out-of-town gigs versus regional theater gigs. My in-town Chicago gigs did not pay as well as my out-of-town gigs. The supreme irony of everything is that the living expenses in Napanee, Indiana are so much lower, but the pay was so much higher that, like, I could actually get by getting a living wage in regional theater where I couldn't do that in the city. I would get like a stipend and some equity points. And oh, you know what I love the taste of on my salad? Equity points. Like, that doesn't feed anybody. It doesn't help at all.
Exposure.
Yeah, you get the ability to not want to pay $1,200 to join equity when they're going to force you to do it. But we've already talked about equity. We've talked about our finances. We've talked about credit cards. Today we do not have time for final thoughts, friends. I'm so sorry. But next week, we're going to be doing a tribute to Women's History Month, which was March. We're going to pretend that it's still March. That's why it's a tribute to Women's History Month in April. And we're going to be talking about some issues around gender, and maybe we'll have some fun too. We're so glad that you guys could join us today. Akira, thank you so much for being here. It's 1 a.m. there now, so we know that you got to go. It's pumpkin time, as my mom used to say. Thank you for being here, Akira.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie, for all of your contributions today. It's been good to see you. Oh, a salute, everyone. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And thank you, Randa, so much for being here.
I'm so glad to be back.
Yes, season 2 is going to be great. All of us obviously also want to thank Goshen Noon Kiwanis for their financial contribution and their support, like their support of Goshen Theater Drama Club. If you are interested in Goshen Theater Drama Club, go over to goshentheater.com. Registration is open. There are scholarships available. So join us this summer. Thank you all so much for joining us, for viewing, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.